Hey guys, how's it going? It is Kyra here with another Diablo Immortal video, and in today's video I want to talk about what's actually better, Broken Soul here or the Remembered. And both of these are legendary offhands you can get for a Barbarian. And I want to just discuss this because I've done guides on this in the past when it comes to the Barbarian. I just did one on Darth Micro's channel, so check out that guide if you want to see what I'm talking about. I just didn't get a chance to talk about this legendary right here. There's been comments talking about how this is very good. I think it's a little situational. I just want to break down all those different situations on when this is good and when I think the Remembered's good. And I'm not making this video to try to say that those comments are wrong or whatever. I just want to discuss this because I didn't even get a chance to talk about this. And I just want to give you guys my take on it. And you can determine for yourself if it's right, wrong, whatever. But I'm just trying to get as much advice / my take as possible to try to help you guys out as much as possible. That's all I'm trying to do here. The difference between these two offhands is all about how it increases your Wrath of the Berserker. So let's actually go to that skill so you can understand and follow along with what I'm talking about here. First thing, Wrath of the Berserker. Enter Berserker Rage that increases your attack speed by 50% and movement speed by 20% for 6.3 seconds. So that's the normal version of this. What Broken Soul does is instead of getting a 50% attack speed boost, you get a 50% crit chance boost, which is awesome for 6 seconds. So it's like it drops it by 0.3 seconds, but you get 50% crit chance, which I think is incredible, very good. Then the Remembered is a little different. What this does here is it's actually going to turn your Hammer of the Ancients into a spirit that fights for you. It's like a summon. So it turns into this, it stuns in that AoE, kicks it with you for a bit. You can also get a different legendary on the chest that allows you to have 2 charges. So you can have 2 of these guys, and then they will attack alongside of you just like a normal minion would. And they'll last for a decent amount of time there. So I think that's pretty good too. The change though is that it's going to make Wrath of the Berserker go back to being an attack speed steroid, not a crit chance one. And I would say for most PvE scenarios, if you don't want the minion, then I do like Broken Soul a lot better. I think Broken Soul is really good. Crit chance is amazing. It's really hard to come by. This is like, for example, if you look at my gear here, crit chance, I only have 10% crit chance. So imagine you get 60% crit chance. That's insane. For 6 seconds, 60% crit chance, you could just really go ham there. But I just think it's a little bit more complicated than that because there's going to be certain times where you're going to want the minion, and there's going to be certain times where you actually want attack speed over crit chance. Let's talk about when you'd want attack speed over crit chance. And I think 100% of the time I would want it in PvP. PvP, I think it's way better. And the reason is because attack speed increases your animations. And I'll show you an example here. Let's get Furious Charge. This is one of the best moves for Barbarian in PvP. But the big thing you need to have to make Furious Charge actually good is you absolutely need this legendary here in Screaming Fury. Furious Charge now charges to a location, damaging all nearby enemies and knocking them into the air. Also increases maximum charges to 2. So it actually lowers the charges to 2 out of 3. But you go further, and you knock people up when you land in that area. So very good for PvP. Well, this is a normal speed here, and you would actually go slower if you get attack speed slowed by the enemy. But what you can do, and what I've been making sure to do when I play PvP, is if you're trying to go in, because this actually gets canceled a ton by Necromancer knockups, by a charging Crusader. It's just constant that this is going to get gated by something else. You have like almost 0 priority when you use it. So you want it to come up fast so you can land it and then knock them up. So how you can make sure it goes faster is you pop this, and then now you actually start charging in way faster. And it's going to help mitigate some of that. If you get hit with a attack speed slow, you're actually going to come out like a normal speed instead of just coming out incredibly slow in those particular situations. And that little extra boost of animation speed, really good for PvP compared to just getting extra crit. Attack speed slow you're going to be clunky, and you're going to get knocked around, moved around a ton, and it's going to be really hard to do what you're trying to do. Also, your whirlwind's going to be way slower too when your attack speed slow. So yes, you have the crit, but then you're going so slow that you might not even hit your crits, or you might not be able to attack them that often. They're just going to run out of it. Not the greatest thing there. So that's why I think objectively it's just better to not even have it on there for PvP. But then PvE wise, it gets a little bit more complicated because I think the Remembered's awesome for PvE. I think the Remembered is absolutely terrible for PvP. The last thing I ever want to have is a minion for PvP. Yes, you do get that stun, but I really don't think that's worth justifying using. I think there's just better things out there. I think Furious Charge is better. I would say even Sprint's probably better. Here's an example of what I would use in PvP. This is mainly what I use. These 4 skills here. We got Whirlwind, Wrath of the Berserker, Furious Charge, and Undying Rage. And then the big thing is you just got to make sure that you have on your chest here, you have Gathering. just because it procs too often. You need to be able to pull people in and kind of disrupt them. I think it's just too good not to have. Whereas for PvE, then it depends on what content you're doing. In a lot of situations, you might actually want the remembered. So for example, in Path of Blood here, this is something that you have to punch up a ton. You're always going to be like 300 combat rating lower. And I've actually been really liking having multiple summons to be able to do this content. I can't really show you guys any footage of this because I've already beaten it all. That's where I really like the summon minions, because there's a lot of bosses you fight, they distract you and they can actually get aggroed by the remembered minion a ton. And then they do decent damage unless they're getting completely one shot. Like for example, there's the poison guy. I forget his specific name, but he'll drop poison all over the ground. And he's actually really tough to deal with and he'll just die instantly. I feel like he's one of the few bosses that's a pure combat rating check. Like if you don't have enough combat rating to do enough damage before he kills you, you're just screwed, because it's so impossible to dodge all the stuff on the ground. Your minions will immediately die to the stuff that he puts on the ground. And then he has this kind of other attack that will go all over the ground too, as he's already having that. Plus it takes forever for that stuff to go away. You can't just kite it out or whatever. I think that's one of the pure, just straight up gear checks in Path of Blood. Nothing's going to work unless you have good enough combat rating. And probably even if I did have enough, I wouldn't use my summons because they're just going to die instantly. In every other boss scenario, I think the summons are fantastic in dealing with those bosses and doing good damage. And then as you're kiting and waiting for cooldowns, they're going to aggro and allow you to do even more damage than you would have with Broken Soul. But in other situations, for example, I think Broken Soul is awesome. Like, I think in hard challenge rifts, I personally like something like this. This would be for hard challenge rifts. You have the Broken Soul and the Wrath of the Berserker. You have Whirlwind with Gathering, so you can knock enemies around and kind of group them up because you're trying to get these big AoE groups. You have Sprint because you need to be able to have the no unit collisions, so you run through them and help pull, and it gets you out of certain situations, especially like the elite enemies that put the stuff on the ground. You can run through the enemies, helps you survive there. Undying Rage is a total necessity in punching up in really hard, challenging content. You not only have enough enemies to lifesteal to full off of, but then it just makes you not die because you're taking so much damage. Like Undying Rage is insane for challengers, so you absolutely need to take that. I think this is amazing, and having the extra crit is going to help you handle those waves faster and then get you to the boss faster. And then when you're on the boss, you actually do decent damage to the boss as well. And you just got to get, if you're really punching up hard, you got to get lucky on the minions that you get in your particular rift, and then also get lucky again on the boss to make sure you can actually beat it, because there's certain bosses that are just going to be incredibly difficult as a melee class. But I think this is going to help out and be able to push you through that content faster to get to the boss, to give you as much time as possible to be able to beat that boss. So that's going to be a scenario. But also, you can argue, based on other situations, that maybe not Broken Soul is the way. Like, I can see if you drop the Gathering, for example, and you put on this right here, Davin's Legacy, you get an extra charge, then you would drop Broken Soul and go back to the Remembered here. So now you have two minions. Then, yes, you don't have the Gathering, but if you don't really care about grouping too much, you just want the convenience of being able to AoE clear, and then you have a lot of bosses. Like, I think for a lot of dungeons, this is actually the optimal strat to really do as much damage as possible. This might, depending on the Helicore bosses, I don't even like taking Whirlwind. I like having the extra minions, and you just going ham, and then you also buffing with like Demoralize. You have your own Wrath of the Berserker. You have the sprint boost with Swift Wing, so you can help people move quick. Then all you're doing is just going for single target damage. I think the two minions probably do the most damage. Just use single target alone with an extra crit rate boost for 6 seconds is going to be better than you plus two other minions. So it's tough to say for sure for that, because we don't have a DPS chart. But I just think it's hard to believe that you for 6 seconds is going to beat two minions being in, plus you beating on a boss. Then you can also have your magic affixes here, and damage done by your summons increased by 10%. Damage done by summons increased by 8%. So there's 18% right there. There's other set bonuses that increases the damage of your summons by X amount that give crit rate based on the amount of summons. I don't think that's a good thing to go for as a barbarian, but those things exist. Whereas, yes, there's ways to boost your primary attack and get attack speed up with set bonuses. I just think there's more ways to boost up multiple minions than there is to boost up your character for only 6 seconds of crit rate. So I think in a lot of situations, I think it's not as clear cut as most of your DPS is based on Broken Soul. Even though it's a good item, it's still a little bit more complicated than that. And then depending on the situation, there's so many times where I'll value having the extra aggro reduction and a distraction, the Remembered, over the extra career rate I would have gotten with Broken Soul. These are all scenarios to keep in mind, and not every scenario is going to apply to each thing. Just because one's really good doesn't mean it's always really good, is all I'm trying to say. And based on what you're struggling with, if you need a little bit more aggro, if you need a little bit more quick damage and your summon can't survive, for example, then go Broken Soul. But if you need a little bit more aggro and you're running around, you need a kite for a bit, then maybe go Remembered. It's just really not that clear cut. I think the one that is clear cut, in my opinion, I really don't think Broken Soul is the best for PvP. I think just attack speed slows are just so powerful because of how they affect your animations that having an attack speed steroid is awesome, especially as a Barbarian, because we have like almost no priority on the moves there. So that's my take when it comes to these. I just think this is a good discussion to have because it's not necessarily one's objectively just better. I think it's situational and it's worth having the discussion for it. With that, guys, I'm going to end the video here, and hopefully you guys